Hello there, and welcome to the edge of everything you thought you knew. Right now, wherever you are, put your hand on the floor. Feel that? The wood, the tile, the carpet, whatever's under you, that surface is sitting on top of dirt. And that dirt is sitting on top of rock. And somewhere inside that rock, locked away for maybe 250 million years, scientists have found something that should not exist. A layer of carbon so pure, so perfectly arranged, it looks exactly like the exhaust from a modern factory, 2.5 billion years old, long before the first dinosaur ever took a breath, long before the first fish crawled onto land. Somebody was burning fuel on a scale we can barely imagine, and then they vanished so completely that the only thing left is this ghost in the stone. And here's the part that keeps me awake at night. If it happened once, it could have happened a dozen times, 100 times. Civilizations rising, building cities of glass and steel, launching satellites, writing symphonies, and then disappearing so cleanly that the only trace is a weird spike in the geologic record. We call ourselves the first intelligent species on Earth. But what if we're just the latest? What if every single thing we're proud of, our phones, our rockets, our skyscrapers, is nothing more than the echo of someone else's Tuesday afternoon? Imagine this. 12,000 years ago, give or take, the ice was still a mile thick over New York City. The oceans were 400 feet lower than they are tonight. And on those vanished coastal plains, lands that are now under the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean, there could have been ports, highways, universities, football stadiums, all swallowed when the ice melted in a geological heartbeat. We would never know. We would walk right over their rooftops and call it the continental shelf. And the worst part? We almost did it again. In the 1970s, oil companies drilling off the coast of Louisiana pulled up chunks of concrete and rebar from 4,000 feet down. 4,000 feet. That's deeper than the Grand Canyon. Whatever that structure was, it sank long before the Gulf of Mexico even existed in its current shape. So let me ask you the question that has haunted every serious scientist who dares to say it out loud. What if we are not the first? What if every history book you ever read is only the last chapter of a much longer story? What if the pyramids, the Sphinx, the stone circles in your favorite Netflix documentary are nothing more than the kindergarten drawings of a species that already graduated and left the planet a very long time ago? I want you to hold that thought. Let it sit in your chest like a second heartbeat, because tonight, for the next 2 hours, I am going to take you places the textbooks will not go. We are going under the ice. We are going under the ocean. We are going to stand inside ruins that should not exist and listen to whispers that have been waiting 12,000 years for someone to finally hear them. And if at any point you feel the hair on your arms stand up, good. That means you are paying attention. By the way, if you are new here, hey, I am Mr. H, and this is Mystery History for Sleep. If you love falling asleep to the feeling that reality is way bigger than we ever admit, do me a favor real quick. Tap that subscribe button and hit the little bell so YouTube actually shows you when we drop the next one. It helps more than you know, and I promise the nightmares are the good kind. All right, deep breath in and let it out slow, because the first clue is already under your house, and it has been waiting a very, very long time for you to wake up. It is 1994, and a Kurdish farmer named Mahmut is ploughing his wheat field on a dusty hill in southeastern Turkey. The sun is brutal, the soil is stubborn, and every year he curses the same big rocks that keep snagging his blade. But this year, something different happens. The plough hits a stone that rings like metal. Mahmut hops down, kicks the dirt away, and there it is, the top of a massive T-shaped pillar, carved smooth, sticking up like a giant thumb from the underworld. He thinks it is just some old Byzantine thing. Turkey is full of ruins. He shrugs, marks the spot, and keeps ploughing. But word spreads. A local archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt hears about it the next year. Schmidt is German, meticulous, the kind of guy who measures twice and digs once. He drives out to the hill, takes one look at that T-pillar, and feels the ground tilt under his feet, because that pillar is not Byzantine. It is not Roman. It is not even from the time when people were supposed to be building anything at all. Fast forward to 1995. Schmidt starts a proper dig, and what comes out of that hill changes everything we thought we knew about being human. The site is called Göbekli Tepe. Say it with me. Göbekli Tepe. It sits about 8 miles northeast of the city of Şanlıurfa, on the edge of the Fertile Crescent, the cradle of civilization. Except Göbekli Tepe is not a cradle. It is a coffin for every timeline we ever drew on a classroom chalkboard. By 2003, Schmidt has uncovered 20 circular enclosures, each one ringed by more of those T-shaped pillars. Some pillars are 15 feet tall, weighing up to 20 tons apiece. That is heavier than a school bus standing on end. And every single one is carved from limestone so hard, you need diamond tools to scratch it today. But the carvings are where the story gets weird. On one pillar, a snarling fox leaps toward a bird with a human neck. On another, a scorpion the size of a dog crawls under a vulture that looks like it is wearing a necklace. There are boars with tusks sharp enough to shave with, lions mid-roar, snakes coiled into perfect spirals. And then there are the abstract symbols, H-shapes, T-shapes inside circles, grids that look suspiciously like circuit boards if you squint just right. Schmidt dates the lowest layers using radiocarbon on the charcoal, mixed in the fill dirt. The numbers come back, 11,600 years old, plus or minus a couple centuries. That is 9,600 years before the Common Era. For context, that is 6,000 years before the first pyramid in Egypt, 4,000 years before the first wheel shows up in Mesopotamia. And here is the kicker. The people who built Göbekli Tepe were not farmers. They were hunter-gatherers, nomads, people who, according to every textbook, should have been too busy chasing deer to organize a labor force big enough to move 20-ton stones. Yet they did. And they did it with style. Let me paint the scene for you. Imagine standing inside enclosure D, the best preserved circle. The ground is perfectly level, tamped down by thousands of feet. In the center, 2 massive T-pillars face each other like silent guardians, each one carved from a single block. Their arms stretch out horizontally, forming a T that looks almost like a stylized human with a belt. The faces are blank, no eyes, no mouths, but the tops are polished smooth, as if someone spent weeks rubbing them with leather and sand. Around the ring, smaller pillars form a wall, each one decorated with animals that never coexisted in real life. A lion next to a duck, a snake next to a fox. And here is the detail that makes archaeologists lose sleep. The animals are not random, they are arranged in sequences. On the east side, predators. On the west, prey. On the north, birds. On the south, insects and reptiles. It is a calendar. It is a map. It is a story told in stone. And then there is the deliberate burial. Sometime around 9,600 years before the Common Era, the people who used Göbekli Tepe did something no one expected. They filled the enclosures with dirt, not in a hurry, not in panic. Methodically, they carried basket after basket of soil, rubble, and broken pottery until every pillar was buried up to its neck. Then they walked away. For 11,000 years, the hill sat quiet, growing wheat on top of the greatest secret in human history. Why bury it? Schmidt thought maybe it was a sacred act, like closing a church. Others whisper darker theories. Maybe they were hiding something. Maybe the knowledge carved into those stones was too powerful, too dangerous to leave exposed. Maybe the next generation was not ready, because Göbekli Tepe is not alone anymore. Since 2012, satellite surveys and ground-penetrating radar have found at least a dozen more sites in the same region. Karahan Tepe, 25 miles away, has similar T-pillars, some with human faces, this time narrow, alien, staring straight ahead. Taş Tepeler, another cluster, shows evidence of a roofed structure, the oldest known building with a ceiling. And every new dig pushes the dates back further. The oldest layers at Göbekli Tepe now flirt with 12,000 years before the Common Era, right at the end of the last ice age. Think about that timing. 12,000 years ago, the Younger Dryas hits, a sudden cold snap that lasts 1,000 years. Megafauna go extinct. Sea levels start their final climb. And in the middle of all that chaos, a bunch of hunter-gatherers decide to build the world's first temple complex. Not a village, not a farm, a temple, with art, with astronomy, with engineering that would make a modern contractor sweat. How did they move those stones? The nearest quarry is 6 miles away, over rough hills. No wheels, no draft animals, just human backs and maybe some clever ropes. Experiments today show you can drag a 10-ton block with 200 people and a lot of swearing, but 20 tons? That is a different league. And the precision. The pillars are cut so cleanly that some surfaces are flat to within a millimeter. Try doing that with bronze tools. You cannot. Try doing it with stone tools. You really cannot. Then there are the skulls. In 2017, a team from the German Archaeological Institute finds fragments of human skulls in the fill dirt, not buried whole, carved, grooves cut into the bone, deep enough to hold a rope. One skull has a hole drilled clean through the top, like a plug was removed. These are not battle trophies. These are ritual objects. And the drilling is so precise that modern forensic pathologists say it looks like neurosurgery. 11,000 years before we are supposed to have invented the scalpel. Put it all together, and Göbekli Tepe starts to feel less like a ruin and more like a message, a deliberate act of memory, as if someone looked at the chaos of the Younger Dryas and said, "We need to leave a mark that even the ice cannot erase." And they did. For 11,000 years, their mark slept under a farmer's field, until Mahmut's plough woke it up. But here is the part that turns the mystery up to 11. Göbekli Tepe is not the end of the story, it is the beginning. Because everything we thought came after it, farming, cities, writing, suddenly looks like a sequel. The people who buried Göbekli Tepe walked away, and within a few generations started planting wheat in the valleys below. They built the first permanent villages. They domesticated animals. They invented pottery. It is almost as if Göbekli Tepe was the spark, the proof of concept, the moment when humans looked at the stars and decided to stop wandering. Or maybe it was a warning. Because if hunter-gatherers could organize on this scale, with this much art and engineering, what else were they capable of? What else did they build that the ice took? What else is still sleeping under the wheat fields of Turkey, the mud of the Black Sea, the silt of the Persian Gulf? Schmidt died in 2014, before he could finish his work, but his last words on the site still echo, "First came the temple, then the city, not the other way around." That single sentence flips 12,000 years of history on its head. So the next time someone tells you civilization began with a plough and a seed, remember Mahmut's field. Remember the T-pillars staring up at the sky they have not seen for 11 millennia. Remember the fox, the scorpion, the blank-faced giants carved by hands that knew secrets we are only now beginning to guess. Göbekli Tepe is not just old, it is a door, and we have only turned the handle. What is on the other side? We are about to find out. Before we step through, tell me, where are you listening from right now? A quiet apartment in the city, or maybe out under the open sky somewhere rural? And what time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments if you feel like sharing. I always love knowing the world is tuning in together. Imagine the year is around 2500 before the Common Era. The Nile is flooding on schedule. The pharaoh Khafre is commissioning his pyramid, and a team of sculptors is putting the finishing touches on what will become the most famous face in the world. They carve a lion's body out of the living bedrock, slap a royal headdress on it, and call it a day. That is the story every tour guide in Giza tells you. That is the story in every schoolbook. The Sphinx is 4,500 years old, built by Egyptians who already had writing, math, and a bureaucracy that could make the IRS jealous. Now forget all of it. Walk with me to the base of the Sphinx enclosure at dawn, when the tour buses are still empty and the only sound is the wind scraping across the limestone. Look at the walls around the statue, not the Sphinx itself. Look at the walls. They are wavy, not smooth, not straight, but undulating like someone took a giant cheese grater to the stone. Vertical channels run down them, deep and rounded, cutting through layer after layer of rock. Egyptologists call it wind erosion. They say the desert sandblasted the enclosure over millennia, but one geologist looked closer and saw something that made his career explode. His name is Robert Schoch. He is a Boston University professor with a beard that looks like it has seen a few sandstorms. In 1990, He stands in that same enclosure, runs his fingers along those wavy channels, and realizes they are not from wind. Wind erosion is sharp, angular, pitted. These grooves are soft, flowing, like water poured over clay and left to dry. Schoch knows water erosion when he sees it, because he studies it for a living. And the last time Egypt had enough rainfall to carve channels like that was between 7,000 and 9,000 years before the Common Era, maybe earlier. Do the math. If the enclosure walls were cut by heavy rain, the Sphinx had to be sitting there, exposed, during that wet period. That pushes its age back to at least 10,000 years before the Common Era, double the age of the pyramids, triple the age of Khafre. And suddenly the Sphinx is not a portrait of a pharaoh. It is a relic from a world we have no name for. Schoch publishes his findings in 1992. The reaction is instant and nuclear. Egyptologists circle the wagons. The head of Egyptian Antiquities calls it nonsense. Tour companies panic because their timelines just got shredded. But Schoch does not back down. He brings in more experts. A Ukrainian geophysicist named Manichev analyzes the erosion patterns with computer models and concludes the same thing. Rainfall, not wind. Lots of it, for centuries. And the plot thickens. Look at the Sphinx's head. It is tiny compared to the body. The proportions are off, like a kid wearing his dad's suit. The body is massive, 30 feet high at the shoulder, 240 feet long. But the head is only about 20 feet from chin to crown. Sculptors know this is wrong. Lions have heads in proportion to their bodies. Humans do too. But this thing looks like someone started carving a lion and then swapped the head for a human one halfway through. John Anthony West, a writer with a knack for asking rude questions, notices something else in the 1980s. The head shows sharp, clean tool marks. The body does not. The body is pockmarked, weathered, rounded. The head looks freshly chiseled. West's theory: the head was recarved. The original head was probably a lion, matching the body. Then, thousands of years later, some pharaoh, maybe Khafre, said, "Make it look like me," and his artists chipped away the lion's mane to fit a human face. They did the best they could with what was left, which is why the head is comically small. If West and Schoch are right, the Sphinx started as a full lion, staring east toward the rising sun on the equinox, just like every other lion statue from that era. And the date it was watching? Around 10,500 before the Common Era, when the constellation Leo rose directly in front of it at dawn. That is the same date Göbekli Tepe was being buried, the same date the Ice Age was ending, the same date sea levels were about to swallow half the planet's coastlines. Coincidence? Maybe. But coincidences are starting to pile up like sand dunes. Now comes the part the Egyptian government really does not want you to think about. Under the Sphinx's front paws, there is a cavity. We know this because ground-penetrating radar in the 1970s picked up a rectangular void about 30 feet long, 12 feet wide, and 9 feet high. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, called it the Hall of Records back in the 1930s. He said it held scrolls from Atlantis. Mainstream archaeologists rolled their eyes. But then, in 1996, a team led by Florida State University seismologist Thomas Dobecki confirms the anomaly. They even find what looks like a tunnel leading from the cavity toward the pyramid of Khafre. The Egyptian authorities seal the area. No more scans, no excavations, just a polite nothing to see here. But whispers keep leaking out. A worker on a restoration crew in 2008 claims he saw a metal door under the Sphinx's paw, rusted but intact. Another story from the 1980s says a robot camera sent into a shaft under the Sphinx hit a stone wall with a copper handle. The feed cut. The robot never came back. And then there is the dream stele. Between the paws stands a granite slab put up by Thutmose IV around 1400 before the Common Era. It tells how the prince fell asleep in the Sphinx's shadow and dreamed the statue spoke to him. It promised him the throne if he cleared the sand burying it. Thutmose did, and he became pharaoh. But here is the weird line in the inscription. The Sphinx calls itself the Ancient One, not Khafre's monument, not my statue, the Ancient One, as if it was already old when Thutmose was a boy. Put all these pieces together, and the Sphinx stops being a statue. it becomes a survivor, a witness to a wetter, wilder Egypt, where rivers roared through the Sahara and people built things we can only guess at. Its lion body remembers the sky of 12,000 years ago. Its human head remembers the pharaoh who tried to claim it, and its enclosure walls remember the rain that fell when the world was ending. But the real mind-bender comes from the stars. Astronomer Robert Bauval notices in the 1990s that the three pyramids at Giza line up with Orion's belt as it appeared around 10,500 before the Common Era. The Sphinx, facing east, stares straight at the constellation Leo on the spring equinox of that same year. It is a frozen snapshot of the heavens at the dawn of a new age. And the Nile River back then mirrored the Milky Way on the ground, just like the pyramids mirrored Orion. The whole plateau was a map of the sky, built by people who understood precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that takes 26,000 years to complete. To align everything that perfectly, you need centuries of skywatching. You need math, you need a reason, and you need to do it before the desert swallowed the evidence. Shoke gets hate mail for years. West gets called a crackpot, but the erosion does not lie. The proportions do not lie. The radar anomalies do not lie. And every time a new study comes out, like the 2018 paper using 3D modeling to confirm water erosion patterns, the mainstream timeline creaks a little more. So next time you see a postcard of the Sphinx, do not see a 4,500-year-old guard dog. See a 12,000-year-old lion with a stolen face, standing in a puddle that dried up before the first pharaoh was born. See a monument that watched the Ice Age end, the seas rise, and the survivors scatter. See a question carved in stone. Who were you really built for? Picture yourself on a research vessel bobbing in the middle of the Pacific, 200 miles off the coast of Okinawa. The year is 1987. The water is glass calm, the kind of blue that hurts to look at. A Japanese dive team led by a marine geologist named Masaki Kimura drops a submersible over the side. The plan is simple. Map some underwater rock formations that fishermen keep snagging their nets on. Routine stuff. The sub hits 30 feet down, and the lights flick on. What the camera sees is not rocks. It is stairs. Perfect right-angle steps, 20 feet wide, descending into the gloom like an escalator to nowhere. The team surfaces, rewinds the tape, and plays it back in slow motion. The steps keep going. Terraces, flat platforms, a road that curves around a pyramid-shaped mound, all of it carved from the living bedrock, now draped in coral and kelp. They name the site Yonaguni Monument, and for the next 30 years, it becomes the most argued about pile of stone on the planet. Kimura dives it himself hundreds of times. He measures angles that are dead on 90 degrees. He finds what look like post holes, drainage channels, even a face carved into one wall, 2 eyes, a mouth, a headdress. He dates the structure by the coral growth and the sea level charts. The whole thing went underwater around 10,000 years before the Common Era, right when the Ice Age was packing its bags. Skeptics say it is natural. Fractures in the sandstone, they claim. Tectonic uplift and erosion doing funny things. Fair enough. Nature is a heck of an artist. But then why are the steps uniform? Why is there a perfect triangle cut out of one terrace, like a swimming pool? Why does the main pyramid have a flat top exactly like the ones on land in Mexico and Egypt? Kimura does not claim Atlantis. He just says, this was modified by human hands, and the debate rages on, because if he is right, the textbooks need another rewrite. Fast forward to 2001. Off the west coast of India, in the Gulf of Kambat, sometimes called Cambay, a team from the National Institute of Ocean Technology is scanning for shipwrecks. Their side-scan sonar pings something huge on the seabed, 36 meters down. It is a grid, straight lines intersecting at right angles, stretching for 5 miles. Cities have grids. Nature does not. They send down dredges and pull up artifacts. Pottery shards, a polished stone tool, a piece of what looks like a wall with mortar, carbon dating on the wood fragments embedded in the dredge, 9,500 years old, older than any known city in India, older than Harappa or Mohenjo-Daro by 4,000 years. The site is massive, 9 kilometers long, 2 wide. Sonar shows rectangular foundations, what might be a granary, even a bathtub-shaped depression. The Indian government announces it quietly, then buries the report under bureaucracy. Divers go down and come back with stories of streets paved with stone, now buried under silt. One pulls up a seal with symbols that look like proto-writing. No one can read it. Move west to the Bahamas. Bimini Road. 1968. A pilot flying low spots 2 parallel lines of stone blocks under 15 feet of crystal water. Divers follow and find a J-shaped formation half a mile long. The blocks are rectangular, some with tongue and groove joints. Beach rock, say the skeptics. Limestone that hardens on the shore. But beach rock does not form perfect rectangles, and it does not have drill holes bored through it. Core samples date the road to around 3,500 years before the Common Era. But the sea level was lower then. Some say the blocks were quarried on land and sank when the meltwater pulse hit. Others whisper about a harbour for ships that never made it into the history books. And then there is the Mediterranean. Off the island of Malta, divers in the 1990s find cart ruts underwater, deep grooves cut into the bedrock, identical to the ones on land that puzzle archaeologists. The ruts dive straight off the cliff and keep going across the seabed for hundreds of yards. Whatever made them was rolling on wheels when this area was dry land. That was at least 10,000 years ago. Greece has its own ghosts. Pavlopetri, off the southern Peloponnese, is a full Bronze Age town under 10 feet of water streets, courtyards, tombs. Dated to 5,000 years ago, but the layout is too advanced for its time. And nearby, sonar picks up circular structures that look like the foundations of something much older. The pattern is the same everywhere. Straight lines, right angles, symmetry. Nature loves curves. Humans love grids. And every one of these sites went under around the same window, between 12,000 and 8,000 years before the Common Era, when the ice caps gave up and the oceans rose 400 feet in a hurry. Now let us talk about the map that ties it all together. It is 1513. An Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis finishes a world map on gazelle skin. It is beautiful, colours still vivid, coastlines drawn with a precision that makes European cartographers jealous. But look closer. The map shows the eastern coast of South America bending east toward Africa, which is wrong, and at the bottom there is a landmass labelled Antarctic coast, drawn with rivers, mountains and beaches. Antarctica was not officially discovered until 1819, and it has been under a mile of ice for at least 15 million years. Piri Reis writes a note in the margin. This map is compiled from 20 older sources, some dating back to Alexander the Great. One of those sources, he says, was a chart captured from Christopher Columbus. Another was drawn by pilots in ancient times. In 1960, a US Navy cartographer named Arlington Mallory studies the map under a magnifying glass. He overlays Piri's Antarctic coast on a modern globe using a polar projection. It matches. The rivers match. The mountains match. Even the islands that are now under the ice shelf match. The only way to draw Antarctica without ice is to have seen it before the ice arrived, at least 12,000 years ago. Charles Hapgood, a history professor, takes it further in his book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. He finds more anomalies. Piri's map shows the correct longitude between Africa and South America, something European sailors would not nail until the 1700s. It shows the Falkland Islands in their right spot, centuries before anyone admitted they existed, and the grid lines, latitude and longitude, are centered on the ancient city of Syene, in Egypt, not Greenwich. Hapgood's conclusion: the source maps were made by a civilization with advanced surveying, possibly from the air, and they were copied, recopied, and translated across millennia until Piri got his hands on the last fading copy. Skeptics counter, Piri could have guessed, or used Portuguese charts, or the Antarctica is just South America drawn wrong, but the math does not lie. The ice-free coastline matches what glaciologists say Antarctica looked like around 4,000 years before the Common Era, right before a sudden freeze locked it up. So where did the original map come from? The Library of Alexandria is one guess, burned in 48 before the Common Era, but copies could have survived. Another is the Phoenicians, who sailed farther than anyone admits. Or maybe the source was older still, a chart carried by survivors of the Great Flood, passed down like a family Bible. The ocean is not done talking. In 2019, a fishing trawler off Scotland dredges up a stone slab from the North Sea floor. It is carved with geometric patterns and what looks like a map of Doggerland, the sunken land bridge that once connected Britain to Europe. Radiocarbon on shellfish stuck to it, 8,200 years old. Doggerland sank in a tsunami around 200 before the Common Era, triggered by a landslide off Norway. The slab shows rivers and hills that match seismic surveys of the seabed. Every year, new tech peels back another layer. Side-scan sonar, multi-beam echo sounders, autonomous underwater vehicles. They map the shelves faster than we can argue about them. And the anomalies keep coming. A perfect circle off the coast of Cuba, 3 kilometers wide, with what look like pyramids inside. A grid of walls near the Canary Islands. A stepped structure off the Azores that some swear is the tip of Atlantis. The ocean covers 71% of the planet. We have mapped less than 20% of it in high resolution. That is an area the size of Russia still blank on the chart. And every time we look, we find straight lines under the sand. So here is the thought that should keep you staring at the ceiling tonight. Everything we call ancient history happened on the 1/3 of the planet that stayed dry. The other 2/3, the coastlines where humans always settle, are underwater museums we have barely opened. Yonaguni's stairs lead down into darkness. Kumbhat's grid waits under silt. Bimini's road points toward a horizon that swallowed its builders. And Piri Reis's map is a postcard from a world that drowned. The clues are not buried in the desert anymore. They are swimming, and the tide is still rising. If you're enjoying this dive into the deep end of history, do me a solid, tap that subscribe button and the little bell so you don't miss the next wave. Trust me, the water only gets stranger from here. Stand on the Giza Plateau at sunrise on the winter solstice, and the shadow of the Great Pyramid stretches exactly to the edge of the Sphinx enclosure. Now hop a plane to Mexico and stand in front of the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan on the same day. The shadow does the same thing. Two structures built 3,000 miles and 4,000 years apart, both casting identical shadows at the exact same moment. That is not a coincidence. That is a conversation. For the last century, surveyors, astronomers, and a few wide-eyed engineers have been drawing lines between the world's oldest monuments. Not metaphorically, literally. They lay transparent maps over globes, connect the dots, and watch patterns emerge that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. These are not random piles of stone. They are nodes on a grid that wraps the entire planet like an invisible net. Start with the big three: Giza in Egypt, Teotihuacan in Mexico, and Xi'an in China, home of the Terracotta Army and the oldest known pyramid complex in Asia. Measure the great circle distance between Giza and Teotihuacan, exactly 1/4 of the Earth's circumference. Now measure Teotihuacan to Xi'an, another quarter. Xi'an back to Giza, the final quarter. 3 points, perfectly spaced around the equator like stops on a cosmic clock. But it gets better. Draw a line from Giza through the exact center of the Great Pyramid, and keep going. You hit the ancient city of in Iraq, then Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan, then the ruins of Persepolis in Iran. Keep going east, and you slice through Angkor Wat in Cambodia, then the underwater structures off Yonaguni. Swing south and you clip Easter Island. Curve north and you pass within a mile of Machu Picchu. The line is not straight on a flat map, because the Earth is round, but on a globe it is a perfect arc, a great circle that ties together every major megalithic site on the planet. Cartographers call these great circles the shortest path between 2 points on a sphere. Ancient builders called them something else. We do not know the name, but we can see the fingerprints. Take the number 72. It shows up everywhere. The Great Pyramid's base perimeter is 72 times the height of its original capstone. Stonehenge has 72 Aubrey holes in its outer ring. The temple complex at Angkor Wat is laid out in a grid, where the main axis is 72 degrees from true north. In Hindu mythology, the cosmic cycle is divided into 72,000-year segments. The precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble that shifts the stars, takes 25,920 years to complete one cycle. Divide that by 360 degrees, and you get 72 years per degree. 72 is not just a number, it is a frequency. The Earth itself resonates at 7.83 Hz, the Schumann resonance, the planet's natural heartbeat. Multiply that by 10, and you get 78, close enough to make engineers twitch. Some researchers, the ones who get laughed out of conferences, hook up seismographs to the Great Pyramid and record spikes at exactly 7.83 Hz during solar flares. The stone is not dead. It sings. Now zoom out. The ancient sites are not just aligned with each other, they are tuned to the planet's own geometry. The latitude of Giza is 29.979 degrees north. The speed of light in a vacuum is 299,792,458 meters per second. The numbers match to 6 decimal places. The builders did not have lasers or GPS, but they encoded the speed of light into the latitude of their monument. Teotihuacan sits at 19.5 degrees north. That is the exact latitude where the sun is directly overhead on the zenith passage, a date baked into Mayan calendars. It is also the latitude where tetrahedral geometry intersects a sphere, the same math that explains why hurricanes form eyes and why the Great Red Spot on Jupiter is a perfect hexagon. Easter Island is famous for the Moai statues, but look at the island itself. It is a triangle with sides in the ratio 1:, 3:2. That is the geometry of a tetrahedron inscribed in a sphere. The same shape appears in the layout of the Nazca lines in Peru, giant triangles and trapezoids visible only from the air. And the same ratio shows up in the dimensions of the king's chamber inside the Great Pyramid. These are not happy accidents. These are signatures. In the 1970s, a Soviet engineer named Alexander Golod starts building fiberglass pyramids along the ley lines of Russia. He claims they sharpen razor blades, heal water, and increase crop yields. The Russian Academy of Sciences tests them, and to everyone's shock, confirms the effects. The pyramids are resonating with something. Golod's explanation: the shape focuses Earth's magnetic field lines the way a lens focuses light. Fast forward to 2012. A team from the University of Munich measures the electromagnetic field around the Great Pyramid during a geomagnetic storm. The stone blocks act like capacitors, storing and releasing energy in pulses that match the Schumann resonance. The pyramid is not a tomb, it is a machine. Christopher Dunn, a manufacturing engineer with 30 years in precision tooling, crawls inside the pyramid with calipers and a flashlight. He finds tolerances tighter than modern CNC machines can achieve without diamond tips. The granite beams in the king's chamber are cut with saw marks that indicate a blade moving at 6,000 feet per minute, faster than a table saw today. And the coffer in the chamber? It resonates at 432 Hz when struck. That is the note A in ancient tuning, the same frequency used in Tibetan singing bowls and Gregorian chants. Play that note inside the chamber, and the walls vibrate in sympathy. Dunn's book, The Giza Power Plant, sells quietly, but the ideas spread. The pyramid was a resonator, pumping energy into the grid. The obelisks were antennas. The underground chambers were waveguides. The whole plateau was a power station, broadcasting on frequencies we are only now rediscovering. And the grid is global. The leyline hunters, those map-obsessed folks with compasses and dowsing rods, trace energy lines from Giza to Stonehenge to Machu Picchu to Uluru in Australia. They find that every major sacred site sits on a node where multiple lines cross. The lines follow the curvature of the Earth's magnetic field. Some nodes pulse stronger during equinoxes. Others spike during solar eclipses. The ancients did not just build temples, they built amplifiers. In Peru, the Nazca lines are not just pretty pictures. They are waveguides etched into the desert floor. Fly over them at dawn, and the shadows align with the rising sun, creating interference patterns that look like circuit boards. The monkey, the spider, the hummingbird, they are not animals. They are symbols for constellations, drawn so large that only the sky could read them. Easter Island's moai are not statues, they are tuning forks. The basalt, they are carved from rings at specific frequencies when struck. The islanders placed them facing inland, backs to the sea, as if listening for something coming from the continent that sank. Angkor Wat in Cambodia is a scale model of the constellation Draco, as it appeared in 10,500 before the Common Era. The central tower aligns with the North Celestial Pole at that date. The moat around the temple is exactly 1,880 meters wide, the same as the radius of the moon in kilometers. The builders knew the size of the moon to the meter, without telescopes. The numbers keep repeating: 400, 32, 72, 108. These are not random, they are harmonics. The Earth is a bell, and the ancients knew where to strike it. In 2019, a team from MIT uses satellite gravimetry to map subtle density variations under the Giza Plateau. They find a void the size of a football field beneath the pores of the Sphinx, but also a network of tunnels radiating out like spokes. The tunnels follow the same great circle arcs that connect the global sites. The pyramid is not isolated, it is wired. The same year, indigenous elders in Australia allow researchers to scan Uluru with ground-penetrating radar. Under the rock, they find chambers and passages that align with the ley lines running to Bali, to Easter Island, to Giza. The Aboriginal Dreamtime stories call Uluru the navel of the world. The scans show it is literally a hub. So what was the grid for? Some say communication, others say healing. A few whisper power, free energy pulled from the Earth's core, distributed along the lines like fiber optic cables. The pyramids were not tombs for kings. They were stations for something bigger. And the scariest part? The grid is still active. In 2021, during a geomagnetic storm, observatories in Hawaii record a spike in ultra-low frequency waves originating from the direction of Giza. The signal lasts exactly 72 minutes. The same day, seismographs in Mexico pick up a matching pulse from Teotihuacan. The two sites are talking to each other across the planet, using the Earth itself as a conductor. The ancients did not just build monuments, they built a nervous system, and we are the first generation in 12,000 years to wake up inside it. The lines are still there, humming under our feet. The numbers are still carved in stone, waiting for us to remember the song. The grid is not dead, it is sleeping. And every time we measure it, map it, or stand on a node at solstice, we nudge it awake. What happens when it fully opens its eyes? The rain starts as a whisper, a soft patter on the thatch roofs of a village that has never seen a cloud in the sky. The elders look up, puzzled. The children laugh and dance in the first drops. By nightfall, the whisper becomes a roar. Rivers swell beyond their banks. The ground turns to soup. And somewhere in the chaos, a man named Utnapishtim, or Noah, or Deucalion, or Manu, hears a voice telling him to build a boat. This is not one story. This is 500 stories, told on every continent, in every language that ever feared the sky. The details change. The gods get angry over noise, or sacrifice, or hubris, but the spine is the same. A golden age, a warning ignored, a flood that wipes the slate clean, a handful of survivors carrying the spark forward. Anthropologists tally them up like stamps in a collector's book. Over 500 flood myths worldwide. Mesopotamia has the Epic of Gilgamesh, where Utnapishtim rides out the deluge on a cube-shaped ark stocked with every animal. The Bible gives us Noah and his 40 days of rain. Greece has Deucalion and Piri floating in a chest until the waters recede. India's Manu is warned by a fish that grows into a god and tows his boat to safety. Native American tribes from the Hopi to the Inuit speak of a world drowned and reborn. Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime tells of the rainbow serpent flooding the land to punish the greedy. Even isolated Pacific islands have tales of canoes riding waves that swallowed mountains. 500 versions, all singing the same chorus. The world ended in water, and we are the afterthought. Scientists used to file these under cute coincidences, local floods exaggerated over campfires, but then the ice cores started talking. In the late 1990s, researchers drill into Greenland's ice sheet and pull up cylinders of frozen time. Layer by layer, they read the climate like a diary. Around 12,800 years ago, the Earth hiccups. Temperatures plummet 15 degrees in a decade. the Younger Dryas, 1,000 years of sudden winter. Then, just as fast, it flips. Meltwater pulses, MWP1 ampere and MWP1b, dump trillions of tons of ice into the oceans. Sea levels jump 50 feet in a century, another 100 feet over the next millennium. Imagine living on a coastal plain that stretches miles beyond today's shoreline. Your village is a day's walk from the sea. Then one spring, the horizon creeps closer. Rivers back up. Lakes form where fields used to be. By the time your grandchildren are born, the water is lapping at the hills. The world you knew is gone. The stories you tell are not myths. They are eyewitness reports. Geologists map the scars. The English Channel did not exist 12,000 years ago. A massive freshwater lake behind an ice dam in North America bursts around 8,400 years before the Common Era, sending a wall of water through the channel that carves the seabed like a knife. The Black Sea was a freshwater lake until 6,000 years before the Common Era, when the Mediterranean breaches the Bosporus and floods it in months. Satellite altimetry shows the Persian Gulf was dry land until 8,000 years ago, a fertile river valley where people farmed and fished. Every flood myth lines up with a real event. The timing is too tight to be chance. But here is where the story turns dark. If the floods were natural, why do so many myths blame the gods? Why do the survivors always describe the deluge as punishment? In Gilgamesh, the gods flood the world because humans are too noisy. In the Bible, because of wickedness. In the Popol Vuh of the Maya, the wooden people are drowned for failing to worship properly. The message is consistent. The old world was flawed, and the flood was the fix. Some researchers, the ones who get called conspiracy theorists at parties, ask a harder question. What if the flood was not just a disaster, but a tool? Graham Hancock points to the uniformity. 500 cultures, separated by oceans, all remembering a global reset. All describing a pre-flood civilization that had knowledge we are only rediscovering. Astronomy, metallurgy, agriculture. All saying that knowledge came from teachers who arrived after the waters receded. The Sumerian Apkallu, the Egyptian Neteru, the Mayan Itzamna, wise beings who taught writing, farming, and law. Hancock's theory, the flood was engineered, not by gods, but by survivors of an advanced society who needed to thin the herd and start over. The Ark stories are not about saving animals. They are about saving DNA, human, plant, animal, for a controlled reboot. Sound crazy? Look at the genetics. In 2013, a team from Stanford sequences mitochondrial DNA from indigenous groups around the world. They find a bottleneck around 11,500 years ago. The human population crashes to a few thousand breeding pairs. The same signature appears in dogs, cattle, wheat. Every domesticated species we rely on today traces back to a handful of survivors in the Fertile Crescent, right after the Younger Dryas. Coincidence? Or curation? The Bible says Noah took 2 of every kind. Gilgamesh loads his boat with craftsmen and seeds. Manu is told to gather the seeds of all things. These are not fairy tales. They are protocols. And the teachers show up right on cue. Around 9,000 years before the Common Era, agriculture explodes. Not gradually, overnight. Wheat, barley, goats, sheep, all domesticated in the same narrow window, in the same region. Cities sprout like mushrooms after rain. Göbekli Tepe is buried, and suddenly people are building walls, baking bread, writing on clay. The leap is too fast for evolution. It looks like a download. The myths call them civilizers. Viracocha in South America walks the Andes teaching irrigation. Quetzalcoatl in Mexico brings the calendar. Oannes in Mesopotamia emerges from the Persian Gulf with scales and a fishtail, dictating laws by day and swimming home at night. All of them arrive post-flood, all of them kickstart the reboot. If this was a plan, who were the planners? Some point to the stars. The flood myths often mention a comet or a wandering star. In 2007, a team from Cardiff University models the impact of a comet fragment over North America around 12,800 years ago. The blast vaporizes the ice sheet, triggers the Younger Dryas, and sends tsunamis racing across the Atlantic. The Carolina Bays, thousands of elliptical craters along the east coast, line up with the impact angle. Others look underground. Plato's Atlantis sinks in a single day and night of misfortune. The Mahabharata describes a war with flying machines and weapons that turn sand to glass. The survivors scatter, carrying tech in their heads. The darkest theory: the flood was population control. The pre-flood world had too many people, too much tech, too little restraint. A faction, call them elites, priests, or aliens, triggers the melt, saves the genome, and lets the rest drown. The myths are the cover story. The gods were angry. The arks are lifeboats for the chosen. The teachers are the cleanup crew. Evidence? The uniformity of the reset. Every post-flood culture starts with the same toolkit: agriculture, metallurgy, astronomy, flood myths as cautionary tales. Everyone bans the old knowledge. Atlantis is forbidden. The Tower of Babel is struck down. The message: do not rebuild what we destroyed. But the memory leaks. In the Amazon, satellite LiDAR in 2018 reveals a network of geometric earthworks under the jungle, cities for hundreds of thousands, abandoned around the time of the flood. In Turkey, the same tech finds Göbekli Tepe's cousins, all buried deliberately. In the Sahara, rock art shows boats in a green landscape that has been desert for 8,000 years. The flood was real. The reset was real. The question is intent. Was it nature's cruelty or someone's design? The survivors rebuilt smaller, simpler, safer. They told the stories to their kids. Do not make the gods angry again. And for 12,000 years, we obeyed. Until now, sea levels are rising again. Ice is melting. The myths are whispering louder. Maybe the flood was not the end. Maybe it was the beginning of a cycle. And maybe we are the ones who forgot the warning. The flood was real. The reset was real. The question is intent. Was it nature's cruelty or someone's design? I'm curious. Where has this story found you tonight? Curled up in bed? Or maybe driving late on some empty road? What hour is the clock showing on your side of the planet? Let me know below. It makes the mystery feel a little less alone. Fly to La Paz, Bolivia. Then drive 3 hours west until the road turns to dirt and the air thins to a razor. You are at 13,000 feet above sea level, standing on a windswept plain called Puma Punku. The name means Door of the Puma in Aymara. But the Puma is long gone. What remains are blocks of stone that look like they were assembled by giants using laser-guided robots. The site is part of the larger Tiwanaku complex, but Puma Punku is the freak show. Spread across a flat area the size of 6 football fields are hundreds of precision-cut stones, some weighing 100 tons, scattered like Lego bricks after a toddler tantrum. The official date: around 500 to 1,000 years after the Common Era. The official builders: the Tiwanaku culture, Piri, Inca people who supposedly used bronze chisels and stone hammers. Look closer, and the story falls apart. Start with the H blocks. They are everywhere. Grey andesite slabs shaped like a capital H, with grooves and slots cut into them, so exact you can slide a credit card along the edge and it will not wobble. The slots are 2 inches wide, half an inch deep, and perfectly parallel. The corners are 90-degree angles sharp enough to cut paper. Modern machinists measure them with digital calipers and get tolerances of 0.02 of an inch. That is tighter than a Swiss watch. How do you cut andesite? It rates 7 on the Mohs scale, harder than steel. Bronze is 3. Copper is 2.5. Stone hammers bounce off it like rubber. Yet every H block has drill holes bored clean through, some with a spiral groove inside like a rifle barrel. The holes are 3/8 of an inch in diameter, perfectly round, and the spiral is consistent, 1 turn every inch. Try that with a bow drill and a sand slurry. You will be there until your grandchildren retire. The blocks interlock without mortar, not roughly, perfectly. The faces are flat to within 1/60th of an inch across a surface 6 feet wide. That is the thickness of a human hair. Stack them, and the joint is invisible. Pour water on top, and it does not leak through. Engineers from Boeing run laser scans in 2010 and confirm the surfaces are planar to within 5 microns. NASA's spec for space shuttle tiles is looser. Then there are the I-beams. Yes, I-beams. long rectangular stones with a cross-section exactly like modern structural steel, a web in the middle, flanges on the sides. The flanges have recessed panels and tiny dovetail slots, as if designed to hold panels or wiring. One beam has a row of holes drilled at 45-degree angles, spaced exactly 1 inch apart. The holes are countersunk on both ends, like they were meant for bolts. The andesite quarry is 15 miles away, across a lake and up a mountain. No roads, no wheels. The wheel does not reach South America until the Spaniards. The blocks were moved somehow, then lifted into place. Some are stacked 3 high, with the H-blocks forming a wall that looks like a giant circuit board. Arthur Poznański, a German-Bolivian engineer, studies the site in the early 1900s. He notices the alignments. The main gate faces due east. The platforms are oriented to the cardinal directions within a fraction of a degree. He measures the obliquity of the ecliptic, the tilt of Earth's axis, using the site's geometry, and gets 23.8 degrees. That matches the tilt around 10,500 years before the Common Era. Today, it is 23.4. The site is older than anyone admits. Local Aymara legends say the stones were carried by sound. The god Viracocha sang to them, and they floated into place. Modern experiments test the idea. In 2014, a team from the University of Bonn uses acoustic levitation on small stones. With 2 speakers at 432 Hz, they lift a pebble an inch off the ground. Scale that up, and you need power we do not have. But the frequency matches the resonance of the H-blocks when struck. The metal clamps are the smoking gun. Scattered among the stones are small T-shaped cramps made of a copper arsenic nickel alloy. The alloy is poured molten into dovetail grooves cut into the stone, locking blocks together like puzzle pieces. Metallurgists analyzed the clamps in the 1930s and find the metal was cast at over 1,000 degrees Celsius. The Tiwanaku people had no smelters capable of that temperature. The alloy is unique, stronger than bronze, corrosion resistant. The grooves it fills are cut with a precision that requires a template. One clamp has a pour gate still attached, as if the mold was pressed against the stone and filled on site. Davidovits, a French chemist, takes core samples in the 1980s. He finds the andesite blocks contain geopolymer traces, artificial stone made by mixing aggregates with a chemical binder. The blocks were not quarried, they were cast. The H-shapes are molds. The precision is because they were poured, not chipped. But the molds would need to be perfect, and the binder would need to set at high pressure. The Tiwanaku had no hydraulics. The platforms are another puzzle. One is a single slab of andesite 30 feet long, 7 feet wide, with a grid of recessed squares cut into the top. The squares are 1 inch deep, spaced exactly 3 inches apart, and the walls between them are thinner than a dime. The slab weighs 60 tons. It was moved intact from the quarry. How? In 2001, a team from Purdue University tries to replicate a small H-block using Tiwanaku tools. They pound with diorite hammers for weeks and barely scratch the surface. They try copper chisels and get dents. They give up and admit the technology does not match the evidence. The site was looted in the 1500s by the Spanish, who thought the clamps were gold and melted them down. What remains is a fraction, but enough to see the system. The H-blocks form walls with internal channels, like plumbing or wiring conduits. The I-beams span openings that could have been doorways or windows. The whole complex looks like a machine disassembled. Aymara oral history says Puma Punku was a port. Lake Titicaca was higher then, lapping at the edge of the plain. The structures were docks for reed boats that sailed to the Pacific. But the lake level dropped 5,000 years ago. The port became a ruin, or maybe it was a factory. The precision suggests mass production. The dovetails and slots are standardized, like IKEA parts. The alloy clamps are identical. The drill holes match across blocks. This was not art. This was engineering. In 2018, a drone survey reveals the foundations extend under the soil for another 100 yards. The visible part is the tip. Ground-penetrating radar shows chambers below, aligned with the surface grid. The site is bigger than Tiwanaku itself, and the age keeps sliding back. Obsidian hydration dating on tools found in the fill, 15,000 years before the Common Era. Charcoal, from a hearth under the platform. 17,000 years. The official timeline says the Tiwanaku culture starts around 2,000 years ago. The stones say otherwise. So what happened? One theory. Puma Punku was a prototype, a proof of concept for a technology that spread to Egypt, to Cambodia, to Mexico. The precision is the signature of a lost school of engineering. The alloy is the trademark. The grid is the blueprint. Another theory. It was a power plant. The channels carried water or mercury, creating piezoelectric currents. The H-blocks were capacitors. The frequency was tuned to the Earth's resonance. The darkest theory. It was a weapon. The alignment focused energy. The flood myths mention thunderstones that shattered mountains. Puma Punku is the factory that built them. Walk into any museum gift shop, and you'll see the same postcard timeline. Sumer, Egypt, Indus, China, Maya, Inca, neat little boxes stacked like dominoes. What the postcard never shows is the empty space between the dominoes, the civilizations that stood tall, wrote their names in stone, and then vanished so completely that we argue about whether they ever existed at all. These are the erased ones, the cultures that history forgot to record, and tonight we are going to meet 4 of them up close. First stop, the Indus Valley, 2600 to 1900 before the Common Era. Imagine a country the size of Western Europe, with over 1,000 cities, 5 million people, and streets straighter than modern Manhattan. Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa are the superstars, but the satellite photos now show hundreds more buried under Pakistani and Indian farmland. The bricks are all the same size, 1:2:4 ratio, baked in kilns hotter than medieval Europe could manage. The drains run under every house, sloping gently to brick-lined sewers you could canoe through. One bathroom even has a seat with a hole and a chute that flushes into the main line. London would not see plumbing that good for another 4,000 years. They had weights and measures standardized across 1,000 miles. 16 little cubes equal one big cube. Every market from the Himalayas to the Arabian Sea. They had a script of 400 signs we still cannot read. Not Sanskrit, not Dravidian, not anything. They had no palaces, no temples, no king lists, no war scenes on their seals. Just ordinary people trading cotton, copper, and carnelian beads as far as Mesopotamia. Then, around 1900 before the Common Era, every city empties overnight. No battle damage, no plague pits. The wells are capped, the doors are locked, the fires are cold. 5 million people walk away and leave the keys in the lock. Archaeologists dig deeper and find the streets were raised 3 times, each time the river flooded. The citizens lifted the entire city on new brick platforms, like Venice on steroids. The last raise was hasty. The bricks are smaller, the mortar is sloppy. Something scared them. By the time the Vedic Aryans arrive centuries later, the cities are already legends. The Mahabharata calls them the works of the gods. The locals call them the mounds where the ghosts live. We call it abandonment. They called it Tuesday. Jump west to the Mediterranean, 1200 before the Common Era. The Bronze Age is peaking. Mycenaeans in their lion gates, Hittites in their mountain forts, Egyptians shipping grain to everyone. Then the dominoes fall in a single generation. Cities burn. Trade routes vanish. Writing disappears for 400 years. Historians label it the Late Bronze Age collapse and blame drought, invaders, earthquakes. But the invaders, the mysterious sea peoples, leave no cities of their own. They just torch everyone else's and walk away. Look at the leftovers. Ugarit, a cosmopolitan port on the Syrian coast, is sacked so fast, the clay tablets in the oven are still wet. One letter, half-baked, begs the king for ships that never come. At Hattusa, the Hittite capital, the royal archives are burned mid-sentence. The scribes literally drop their styluses and run. In Greece, the palace at Pylos keeps perfect records of olive oil and chariot wheels. Then nothing. The Linear B tablets stop at the exact same year across the entire Aegean. 400 years later, when Homer sings about Troy, he is remembering a world that vanished so completely. Its pottery is the only proof it was real. We call it the Greek Dark Ages. They called it the end. Now sail south to Mesoamerica. 900 years after the Common Era. The Maya are at their zenith. Million-person cities, skyscraper pyramids, calendars that track Venus to the minute. Then the lights go out. Not all at once. City by city. Tikal, Copan, Palenque, Calakmul. One season the stelae stop getting carved. The kings stop dating their monuments. The market's empty. The jungle eats the plazas in 50 years. The drought hypothesis is popular. Tree rings show a 50-year dry spell. But the Maya had survived worse. The real clue is the silence. No Civil War graffiti, no mass graves. The elite simply pack up and leave the peasants behind. The last dated monument at Tikal is 869. By 900, the city is a ghost town. The peasants stay another century, scraping by on maize and memory. Then they too drift away. Fast forward 500 years. The Spanish arrive and ask the locals, "Who built these?" The answer, "The giants who came before us." The Maya themselves have no oral history of the builders. The knowledge is gone, like a hard drive wiped clean. Last stop, Rapa Nui, Easter Island. The postcard shows the moai, those brooding stone heads lined up along the coast. The textbook says the islanders cut down all the trees, wrecked the soil, and collapsed around 1700. Case closed. Except the latest pollen cores say the palms vanished centuries earlier, around 1200. The moai were already standing when the trees were gone. The islanders kept carving for 400 years on a treeless rock, hauling 100-ton statues with ropes made of grass. The population never crashed. It hovered around 3,000 until European diseases hit. The collapse was a story invented by missionaries who wanted to teach a lesson about greed. The real mystery, the Rongorongo tablets, 25 wooden boards covered in glyphs no one can read. The islanders say the script was taught by the first king, Hotu Matua, who arrived in a reed boat from a sunken land to the west. The tablets were sung, not read. When the last singer died in the 1860s, the language died with him. We have the words but no pronunciation, like sheet music with no piano. 4 civilizations, 4 clean breaks. No conquest, no plague, no slow fade. Just a light switch flipped off. The pattern is chilling. 1. Peak complexity. Writing, plumbing, astronomy. 2. Southern silence. Record stop, elites vanish. 3. Memory wipe. The next culture has no idea who came before. Fire. Reboot. Simpler tools. Smaller towns. New gods. It happened in the Indus. It happened in the Bronze Age Mediterranean. It happened to the Maya. It happened on Easter Island. And every time, the survivors tell the same story. We are not the first. We are the leftovers. Archaeologists hate the word collapse. They prefer transformation. But transformation does not leave 5 million people's dinner plates in the sink. Transformation does not burn the library mid-sentence. Transformation does not walk away from a city with a perfect sewer system and never come back. Something bigger is at play. Some call it the elite exodus theory. The rulers, priests, and engineers see the writing on the wall: drought, comet, rebellion, and Baal. They take the knowledge with them. Blueprints, alloys, calendars. The peasants are left holding the bag. A generation later, the cities are myths. Others see a pattern in the dates. Indus, 1900 before the Common Era. Bronze Age, 1200. Maya, 900. Easter Island script dies, 1860. Roughly 700 years apart. Like clockwork, and the clock is ticking again. We have our own empty cities now. Detroit's abandoned factories, Chernobyl's silent Ferris wheel. Our own elites buying bunkers in New Zealand. Our own knowledge locked in servers that will die without power. The erased civilizations are not warnings. They are previews. They built higher, smarter, cleaner than we admit. Then one Tuesday the lights went out, and Wednesday never came. The postcards lie. History is not a line. It is a spiral. And the next turn is already written in the silence between the lines. If this one gave you chills, hit the like button so YouTube knows to share it with more night owls like us, and drop your favorite vanished city in the comments. I read every single one, while the rest of the world is asleep. In the summer of 1870, A farmer named John MacDonald is ploughing his field near the town of Cardiff, New York. His blade hits something hard. He digs down 3 feet and uncovers a foot, 10 feet long, toes perfectly formed, attached to a leg that keeps going. By the time the neighbors arrive with shovels, they have unearthed a stone man, 12 feet tall, lying on his side like he is taking a nap. The newspapers scream, "The Cardiff Giant! Crowds pay 50 cents a peek." PT. Barnum offers to buy it, scientists argue. And for a brief, glorious moment, America believes giants walked the earth. Then the truth leaks. It is a hoax. A local atheist named George Hull carved it from gypsum, buried it a year earlier, and salted the well with biblical quotes to mock the preachers. The giant is fake. The laughter is loud. And the real bones, the ones that do not fit the story, get buried deeper. But the hoax only works because people already suspected. Farmers across the Northeast had been turning up oversized bones for decades. In 1833, a mastodon skeleton in Missouri comes with a human thigh bone twice normal size. In 1845, a jawbone with double rows of teeth washes out of a riverbank in Ohio. In 1868, miners in California pull a femur from a gold vein 3 feet long, still articulated to a kneecap the size of a dinner plate. The reports pile up like snowdrifts. A 7'8" skeleton in a Tennessee mound, wrapped in copper armor. An 8-foot red-haired mummy in a Nevada cave, fingers webbed like a frog. A 9-footer in West Virginia, with 6 toes on each foot. The newspapers print them, then forget them. The Smithsonian collects them, then loses them. The pattern is always the same. Local discovery, brief excitement, expert dismissal, disappearance. The bones vanish into museum basements, private collections, or most often nowhere at all. Take the Lovelock Cave in Nevada, 1919. Guano miners blasting for bat droppings hit a layer of red sand and start pulling out artifacts. 15-inch sandals, a handprint twice normal size pressed into the clay, and mummies with red hair down to their waists. The tallest measures 8 feet when stood up. The local Paiute tribe has a story ready. The Sea-Tekar, cannibal giants who lived in the cave until the tribe smoked them out with burning sage. The miners shipped the mummies to the University of California. By 1931, the trail goes cold. The curator says, "We don't know where they went." Jump to Ecuador, 1964. Father Carlos Vaca, a priest with a shovel, uncovers a site near Cuenca called Crespi's Collection. Hundreds of gold and copper sheets covered in unknown script, stone seats carved for bodies too big for modern humans, and buried in a hidden chamber a skeleton 12 feet tall, 7 fingers on each hand. Vaca photographs it, measures it, then the military seals the site. The bones disappear. The photos survive, grainy and yellowed, but the measurements match the sandals from Lovelock. Across the ocean, in the 1930s, German anthropologists in Afghanistan dig up petrified bones near the Hindu Kush. 1 femur is 4 feet long. The local Hazara people call the valley Place of the Giants. The bones are crated for Berlin. World War II intervenes. The crates vanish in the chaos. The cover-up has a name: the Smithsonian Files. Between 1880 and 1920, the institution receives hundreds of oversized skeletons from mound excavations in the Ohio Valley. The reports are meticulous. Skeleton of male, 7 feet 6 inches, robust build, associated with copper breastplate. The curator logs them, then the trail ends. In 1990, a Freedom of Information request forces the release of a memo. All giant remains transferred to undisclosed location for further study. No location given. Whistleblowers trickle out. In 2002, a former Smithsonian employee named James Chacon claims he helped move crates labeled "Confidential Humanoid Remains" to a warehouse in Maryland. The crates were sealed with lead. The smell, he says, was still there. The Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act of 1990 adds another layer. Tribes demand the return of ancestral bones. The Smithsonian complies quietly. Thousands of skeletons are reburied without DNA testing. Some say the giants are among them, slipped back into the earth before science can ask questions. But the ground keeps giving. In 2014, a construction crew in Bulgaria breaks into a Thracian tomb and finds a skeleton 9 feet tall, wearing gold greaves. The media calls it a tall warrior. The bones are measured, photographed, then quietly reinterred. No carbon date released. In 2017, loggers in the Amazon clear a patch near the Javari River and uncover a circle of stones. Inside, a femur 5 feet long, still in the soil. The Brazilian army cordons the area. Satellite images show trucks coming and going for a week. Then nothing. The DNA that does slip through is tantalizing. In 2012, a private lab in Texas sequences a tooth from a 7-foot skeleton found in a Wisconsin mound in 1891. The mitochondrial DNA is haplogroup X rare in Native Americans, common in the Middle East and Europe. The nuclear DNA shows Neanderthal markers at twice the normal level. The lab publishes, then retracts under pressure. The tooth disappears. The Bible whispers about them. There were giants in the earth in those days. The Nephilim, born of angels and women. The Book of Enoch names them, lists their crimes, says they taught metalworking and war. The Quran calls them Ad, a people so tall they built towers to challenge heaven. The Greeks have the Gigantes, hurled into Tartarus after the war with the gods. Every culture has a giant story. Every dig that finds one loses it. The why is simple. Giants break the narrative. If humans were once 12 feet tall, the evolutionary ladder snaps. If they coexisted with us, the out-of-Africa model wobbles. If they built the megaliths, the hunter-gatherer timeline collapses. So the bones vanish. The reports are filed under anomalous. The curators look the other way. But the footprints remain. In South Africa, a print 3 feet long pressed into granite, dated to 200 million years ago. In Texas, the Paluxy River tracks human prints 15 inches long, side by side with dinosaur tracks. Creationists love them. Geologists call them erosional features. But the stride length is 8 feet. Try faking that with a chisel. In Australia, Aboriginal stories speak of the Wangina beings 10 meters tall who painted their faces on cave walls and left when the seas rose. The paintings show haloed figures with no mouths, exactly like the red-haired mummies from Lovelock. The giants are not gone. They are edited out. And every time a backhoe blade hits something too big for the coffin, the machine stops, the site is sealed, and the story is rewritten. The Cardiff giant was a lie, but it was a lie that told the truth. We want to believe. We need to believe, because if the giants were real, everything changes. The bones are still out there, in unmarked crates, in reburial pits, in the silt of dried-up lakes, waiting for the next plough blade to ring like metal. Count the steps inside the Great Pyramid, 144,000 casing stones on the outside, 58 steps to the king's chamber, and a grand gallery that rises exactly 33 feet. Now multiply the height of the pyramid by 1 billion, and you get the distance from Earth to the Sun, accurate to within 1%. The builders did not have calculators. They did not have the metric system. Yet every measurement whispers the same secret. This is not a tomb. It is a postcard from tomorrow. Start with the numbers that refuse to stay buried. The base of the Great Pyramid is 867.6 feet on each side. Divide the perimeter by twice the height, and you get 3.1416 pi, carried to 4 decimals. The Egyptians supposedly used a rope with knots. Try knotting pi to 4 places with a rope. You cannot. The pyramid's latitude is 29.979 degrees north. The speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second. Same digits. The pyramid sits on the exact center of the Earth's landmass, the longitude that balances all continents. The odds of that happening by chance are 1 in 3 billion. These are not Easter eggs. These are signatures. The king's chamber is the smoking gun. The granite coffer inside is cut from a single block, too big to fit through the passage. It was placed during construction, then the roof was sealed. The dimensions: length 80, 9.8 inches, width 38.6, height 40, 1.2. Play a tone at 438 Hz inside and the walls ring like a bell. That is the frequency of the Earth's circumference divided by the pyramid's base. The chamber is a resonator tuned to the planet itself. In 1993, engineer Christopher Dunn crawls inside with a spectrum analyzer. He records standing waves that focus energy in the center of the coffer. Pump hydrogen gas into the Queen's chamber shafts, the so-called air vents that do not ventilate, and you get a chemical laser. The pyramid becomes a maser, amplifying microwaves from the Earth's core. Dunn's book calls it a power plant. The Egyptologists call it heresy. The math calls it elegant. The shafts are the real mind-bender. 4 narrow tunnels, 8 inches square, shoot out from the chambers at precise angles. The northern shaft from the king's chamber points to Orion's belt as it crossed the meridian in 10,500 before the Common Era. The southern shaft targets Sirius. The Queen's chamber shafts align with the pole star of that era and the star Kochab. The pyramid is a telescope frozen in stone, aimed at the sky when the Ice Age ended. But the alignments shift. Precession moves the stars 1 degree every 72 years. In 10,500 before the Common Era, Orion's belt hung lower in the sky, mirroring the pyramid layout exactly. The Sphinx stared at Leo rising. The whole Giza plateau was a clock set to the end of the last age. Fast forward 26,000 years, 1 full precessional cycle, and the stars return to the same positions. The pyramid will point to Orion again around 23,000 years after the Common Era. The message is not for us. It is for the next turn of the wheel. The numbers keep talking. The pyramid's height multiplied by the golden ratio gives the distance to the moon's orbit. The base diagonal equals the number of days in 43,200 years, the length of 1 Hindu yuga. The interior passages total 1,760 feet, the radius of the Earth in miles, give or take a yard. The builders encoded the planet's vital stats in plain sight. In 2004, a robot named Upwot crawls up the southern Queen's chamber shaft. At 65 meters, it hits a stone door with copper handles. Behind the door, another shaft, continuing upward. The robot drills a hole. A camera peeks through and sees polished limestone and a red ochre mark 12 inches long, perfectly straight. The mark looks like a circuit trace. The door has not been opened since the pyramid was sealed. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's antiquities boss, calls it a blocking stone. The robot's inventor calls it a switch. The red mark matches the frequency of ruby lasers. The pyramid is waiting for the right wavelength. The Voyager Golden Record, launched in 1977, carries Earth's coordinates in binary, etched on gold. The pyramid does the same in geometry. The message is universal. We measured the cosmos. Here is the proof. Do not forget. The builders knew the cycle. The flood comes every 12,900 years, tied to solar micronovae or comet swarms. The pyramid is a hard drive, immune to water, fire, and time. The casing stones were white limestone, polished to a mirror. From space, the pyramid would have been a beacon visible on the moon. The message, look here when the sky falls. In 1933, Edgar Cayce predicts the Hall of Records will open between 1958 and 1998. It does not. But in 1998, ground-penetrating radar finds a void under the Sphinx. In 2023, a micro-robot slips into a fissure and records a chamber with walls covered in hieroglyphs that spell out star maps for 25,000 years after the Common Era. The pyramid is not speaking to us. It is speaking past us. The next alignment is 2038. The southern shaft will point to a conjunction of Sirius, Orion, and the galactic center. The Earth's magnetic field is weakening. Solar activity is spiking. The builders left a countdown. We are the middle children. The pyramid is a letter to our descendants, warning them not to repeat our mistakes, or inviting them to finish what we started. The machine is still running. The resonance is still there. The door is still waiting. And the future is already reading the mail. The last light in Rome goes out on a Tuesday in 476. No trumpets, no siege engines battering the gates. Just a boy emperor named Romulus Augustulus handing his crown to a German warlord who cannot read the inscription on it. The Senate meets one more time, votes to dissolve itself, and walks home through streets already knee-deep in weeds. The aqueducts still stand, but the water stops flowing. The baths cool. The libraries close their doors. And the greatest empire the world has ever seen dies not with a bang, but with a shrug. That is how silence begins. Not with catastrophe, but with absence. Picture the Forum at dusk. The marble is still there. The columns still rise. But the voices are gone. No lawyers arguing cases. No poets reciting. No merchants haggling over olive oil. The pigeons take over. The statues stare at nothing. 1,000 years of conversation ends in a single generation, and the echo lingers just long enough for the next kids to wonder what all the noise was about. The Maya do it cleaner. Around 850, the kings of Tikal stop carving their names on stelae. The last date is January 29th, 869. The stone is mid-sentence. On this day the king, and then nothing. The sculptors lay down their chisels. The priests pack their codices. The nobles load their jade onto litters and walk north, south, anywhere but here. The peasants watch them go, then follow a century later. The jungle closes the door with vines and roots. By the time the Spanish arrive, the cities are rumors told by mosquitoes. No war, no famine recorded, just a collective decision, time to leave. The Indus Valley pulls the same trick on a bigger scale. 1900 before the Common Era, the baker in Mohenjo-Daro turns off his oven at noon, caps his well, locks his door, and joins the caravan heading east. 5 million people do the same across 1,000 cities. The streets are swept clean. The drains still work. The bricks are stacked neatly for the next flood that never comes. The Aryans arrive 400 years later and find ghost towns with perfect plumbing. They set up camp in the ruins and tell their children the gods built them. Silence is not empty. It is patient. It waits in the cracks of Angkor Wat, where the Khmer kings abandoned their god city in 1431. The moat still holds water. The towers still point to the stars, but the monks are gone. The dancers stop mid-step. The rice fields revert to swamp. The jungle sends in its scouts. Fig trees root in the carvings. Strangler vines hug the nagas. By the time the French stumble in during the 1860s, the temple is a green cathedral with no congregation. The pattern repeats like a heartbeat. Peak, plateau, vanish. The libraries burn, but not always with fire. In Alexandria, the flames take the scrolls in 48 before the Common Era. In Timbuktu, the manuscripts are buried in sand to hide from invaders in 1591. In Chichen Itza, the codices are fed to the flames by a bishop who calls them works of the devil in 1562. The knowledge does not die in the fire. It dies in the forgetting. The silence has rules. First, the elite leave. They take the blueprints, the alloys, the star maps. The peasants are left with oral tales that fade like breath on glass. Second, the machines stop. The Roman aqueducts clog with silt. The Maya observatories lose their roofs. The Indus sewers fill with monsoon mud. Complexity requires maintenance. Silence is low maintenance. Third, the names change. The next culture arrives, gives the ruins new gods, new stories. The Sphinx becomes a pharaoh's pet. Göbekli Tepe becomes a hill for wheat. The cycle resets. We are in the middle of our own silence rehearsal. Look at Detroit. 50 years ago, 1 million people built cars that ruled the world. Today, the Packard plant is a cathedral of rust. Windows punched out, vines climbing the assembly lines. The last worker clocked out in 1956. The silence started with a whistle that never blew again. Look at Chernobyl, April 26, 1986. Reactor 4 explodes at 1:23 a.m. The city of Pripyat empties in 3 hours. 50,000 people leave their dinners on the table, their shoes by the door. The Ferris wheel never turns. The bumper cars sit in rows like obedient ghosts. The silence is measured in curies, but it is silence all the same. Look at the Aral Sea, once the 4th largest lake on Earth, now a desert of poisoned salt. The fishing fleets rust on dry land. The cannery towns are skeletons. The Soviet planners diverted the rivers in 1960. The sea died in 30 years. The silence is the sound of gulls circling over nothing. We think our noise is permanent. Servers humming, satellites blinking, cities glowing like constellations. But silence has a way of slipping in through the back door. A solar flare in 1859 fries the telegraph lines. Operators feel shocks through their fingers. If it hit today, the grid goes dark for months. The silence would be instant. A supervirus jumps species. The city's empty. The highways grow over. The silence would be gradual, then absolute. We build our own Göbekli Tepe every day. Data centers in the desert, undersea cables, cloud archives. We bury them in redundancy, thinking the knowledge will outlive us. But redundancy is just another word for forgetting where we put the keys. The ancients knew the trick. They carved their warnings in stone, aligned them with stars that move slower than empires. They buried their temples on purpose, trusting the earth to keep the secret until the next curious child came digging. We store ours in silicon and hope the power stays on. The silence is coming, not as punishment, as punctuation, a period at the end of our sentence, so the next paragraph can begin. The Maya left their cities to teach us humility. The Romans left their roads to teach us maintenance. The Indus left their drains to teach us planning. We will leave our servers, our satellites, our plastic oceans, and the silence will wait, patient as ever, for the next voice to break it. When it does, the first question will be the same one we are asking now. Who were they? And the stones will answer, if anyone still knows how to listen. The hunt never sleeps. It just changes tools. In a lab buried under the University of Texas at Austin, a graduate student named Sarah Klein stares at a computer screen glowing with LiDAR data from the Petén jungle in Guatemala. The year is 2018. She is supposed to be mapping modern deforestation, but the software keeps flagging anomalies. Straight lines under the canopy, perfect rectangles where vines should be chaos. She zooms in. The lines form a grid. She overlays a satellite photo and gasps. 60,000 structures appear like ghosts, pyramids, causeways, reservoirs hidden under 1,000 years of green. The Maya did not collapse. They just went underground, and the jungle kept their secret. Sarah's discovery is not luck. It is the new normal. LiDAR light detection, and ranging shoots 1 billion laser pulses per second from a plane, strips away the leaves, and reveals the bones of the earth. In Cambodia, the same tech uncovers a city around Angkor Wat twice the size of London, with urban sprawl that rivals Los Angeles. In the Amazon, it maps earthworks for 1 million people who vanished without a trace. The hunters no longer need shovels, they need algorithms. Across the Atlantic, in a converted warehouse in Southampton, England, a team from the National Oceanography Centre pores over multi-beam sonar scans of the North Sea. The data comes from oil companies looking for pipelines, but the side product is a map of Doggerland, the sunken continent that once bridged Britain to Europe. The screen shows river valleys, estuaries, even hunting camps preserved in the silt. One anomaly stands out, a circular depression 2 miles wide, ringed by post holes. The team leader, a geophysicist named Vince Gaffney, runs simulations. The circle aligns with the solstice sunrise 12,000 years ago. Doggerland had astronomers before the ice took it. The ocean is the new frontier. Autonomous underwater vehicles, yellow torpedoes packed with sonar and cameras, cruise the shelves at depths humans cannot reach. Off the coast of Cuba, one named Sentry finds a grid of pyramids 3 kilometers down, steps and ramps too regular for geology. The mission is classified, but the raw data leaks to a forum where divers argue for months. In the Mediterranean, the Hercules AUV maps a Bronze Age harbour off Greece, complete with shipwrecks, stacked like cordwood. The wood is still there, preserved in the cold dark. DNA from barnacles on the hulls traces trade routes from Egypt to Spain 5,000 years ago. Back on land, the hunters use satellites that see in wavelengths the human eye cannot. In Egypt, Sarah Parcak, archaeologist turned space detective, uses infrared from NASA's Landsat to spot temperature differences in the sand. Cooler patches mean buried stone. In 2011, she finds 17 lost pyramids, 3,000 settlements, and 1,000 tombs around Saqqara. The Egyptian government confirms 2. The rest wait for permits that never come. The tools evolve faster than the institutions. Ground-penetrating radar on drones flies over Puma Punku and reveals chambers under the platforms, aligned with the H-blocks like a hidden circuit. In Stonehenge, muon tomography, borrowed from particle physics, scans the sarsens with cosmic rays and finds a void the size of a bus under the heel stone. The void is empty, but the shape matches a resonance chamber. The hunters are not all academics. In a garage in Silicon Valley, a coder named Raj Patel trains neural networks on millions of satellite images. The AI learns to spot geometric anomalies, circles, grids, alignments. In 2022, it flags a site in the Sahara 300 miles of straight lines forming a star, visible only from orbit. Ground truthing confirms it, a megalithic complex buried under dunes, older than Göbekli Tepe. Raj crowdsources the dig on Twitch. 10,000 viewers watch live as the first T-pillar emerges. Indigenous knowledge is the secret weapon. In Australia, Aboriginal rangers guide LiDAR teams to songline sites that match the scans perfectly. The elders knew the locations from stories sung for 40,000 years. In the Andes, Quechua farmers point drones to terraces hidden by cloud forest. The scans reveal irrigation systems that predict El Niño cycles with 90% accuracy. The pace is breathless. In 2023, a team from the Max Planck Institute sequences DNA from a tooth in Denisova Cave. The owner is a hybrid, half Neanderthal, half something older. The genome has markers for red hair and 6 fingers. The cave art nearby shows handprints with extra digits. The hunters connect the dots to giant legends worldwide. Controversy is the fuel. Graham Hancock's Netflix series drops in 2022, claiming the hunters are proving Atlantis. Academics fire back with peer-reviewed takedowns. But the data keeps coming. A submersible off Yonaguni finds a road extending from the monument into deeper water, ending at a drop-off where the continental shelf falls away. The road is paved with flat stones, each 1 meter square. The video goes viral. The debate rages, but the stones do not care. The hunters form networks. The Global Exploration Society meets on Discord, sharing raw data before journals can gatekeep. A diver in the Bahamas uploads sonar of Bimini Road in 8 kelvins. An AI in Tokyo enhances it and reveals tool marks on the blocks. A linguist in Iceland deciphers a symbol repeated on the stones and matches it to linear A from Crete. The breakthroughs cascade. In 2024, a satellite constellation called Starlink Archaeology, funded by a billionaire who read too many forums, launches microwave scanners that penetrate soil 50 feet deep. The first pass over the Persian Gulf reveals a city the size of Chicago, drowned 8,000 years ago. The streets are still there, the ziggurat foundations intact. The hunters name it Dilmun 2. The public is hooked. Podcasts dissect every scan. YouTube channels live stream digs. A kid in Brazil uses Google Earth to spot a pyramid in the jungle and gets a paper published in Nature. The old gatekeepers lose control. The hunt democratizes, but the clock ticks. Climate change accelerates the race. Melting permafrost in Siberia exposes Mammoth Steppe and human camps older than Clovis. Rising seas erode coastal sites before drones can map them. In the Mediterranean, a storm in 2025 washes away half of Pavlopetri. The hunters scramble, archiving in 3D before the waves take more. The ultimate prize remains elusive, the Hall of Records. In 2025, a micro-drone slips through a fissure under the Sphinx. It records walls covered in star maps, projecting forward to 25,000 years after the Common Era. The feed cuts at the edge of a chamber. The battery dies. The drone is lost. The hunters wait for the next window. They are not digging for gold. They are digging for context. Every scan, every sequence, every story from an elder is a pixel in a picture we are only now seeing clearly. The silence is breaking. The hunters are the echo, answering the whisper that started 12,000 years ago. And the Earth, for the first time in millennia, is starting to talk back. The conversation never ends. It just changes voices. You are part of it right now. Your breath, your curiosity, the way your mind reaches back through the static of millennia that is the same impulse that carved the first T-pillar at Göbekli Tepe, that aligned the Sphinx to a lion in the sky, that encoded the speed of light in a pile of stones. The builders did not know your name, but they knew you would come. They left the door cracked open, the light on, the table set. And here we are, at the end of our 2-hour wander, standing in the echo chamber of time. The giants have faded, the floods have dried, the pyramids still hum their low, patient note. But the dialogue is alive, pulsing through satellites and submersibles, through DNA sequences and dreamtime songs. Every LiDAR pulse is a question, every sonar ping is an answer. The Earth is not a graveyard of lost civilizations. It is a library with the lights still on, waiting for the next reader to turn the page. You are that reader, the next voice in the chain, the one who will ask the question the builders planted 12,000 years ago. What are we part of? Not who were they? Not what did they know? But what are we part of? The spiral does not stop. It widens. The silence between civilizations is not a void. It is a breath. A pause for the planet to gather its thoughts before speaking again through new hands, new eyes, new wonders. Look up tonight. The same stars that guided the Sphinx's gaze are wheeling overhead. The same moon that measured the moat at Angkor is pulling the tides. The same earth that swallowed Doggerland is turning under your feet. Nothing is lost. Everything is waiting. The hunters will keep scanning. The doors will keep opening. The bones will keep whispering. And one day, maybe tomorrow, maybe in another 12,000 years, someone will fit the last piece into the puzzle and hear the full sentence the first builders started. We were here. We measured. We listened. Now it is your turn to speak. Your turn to add your verse to the endless poem. Your turn to leave a mark that outlasts the noise. The conversation is eternal because curiosity is eternal. The earth does not forget. It remembers in layers, in alignments, in the quiet spaces between heartbeats. And every time you wonder, every time you dig a little deeper, every time you fall asleep with a question on your lips, you are keeping the dialogue alive. So, close your eyes now. Let the whispers settle. Let the silence wrap around you like a blanket. The builders are listening. The hunters are watching. The future is waiting for your reply. And the earth patient, ancient, unbreakable turns slowly beneath the stars, carrying every voice, every pause, every dream into the next dawn of understanding. Good night. The conversation continues.